I want to call to order the July 18th, 2023 special meeting of the Chino Valley Planning and Zoning Commission. We do have a quorum up here. We have some commissioners that are absent. We'll do away with the roll call. That's a good signal for everybody to turn off all their personal communication devices. Thank you. And then Commissioner Pasiak, would you please lead us in the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so we don't have any staff reports tonight. We're going to move straight over to item C, public hearings. This is CUP-2022-01. This is the 6-month review of the conditional use permit CUP 2022-01 for an equine rescue center owned and operated by Derek and Louise Pereira.
Pereira.
Okay, Pereira. Okay, sorry about that.
Close enough.
On a 5-acre parcel zoned SR 2.5 located at 6680 South Fire Sky Lane, Chino Valley, Arizona. Okay, before we get started, just a little review for myself. I was not at some of the planning and zoning meetings. I was missed one, and then I recused myself on the second one. But I have reviewed and read the minutes from those two meetings and the town council meeting on this item. So I feel like I'm up to speed as good as anybody's going to be with this. And so I'm not going to recuse myself tonight. I'm just going to run the meeting like I knew what I was doing. All right. So anybody from the commission had any comments, questions from outside people concerning this item? Okay, all negative. Will.
All righty. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, members of Commission. Will Dingy, Senior, excuse me. Wow. I started off as Senior Planner here when this item first went. I am now the Assistant Director here with the Town of Chino Valley. The item before you is the 6-month review of the conditional use permit for the Equine Rescue Center located on Fire Sky Lane, owned and run by Derek and Louise Pereira. So this is the 4th time that this item has come before the Commission. We'll go over through the timeline here in a sec. But the property owner and business owner is in attendance this evening. So for any questions that you might have, he is here to answer them. So just briefly recap where the subject property is located. It is approximately 5 acres in size, located on the west side of South Fire Sky Lane in between West Road 1 South and West Road 2 South. To the west and south of the general area here is Yavapai County jurisdiction. So this is right on the edge of town limits. And then to the northeast is the Molly Ray Estates subdivision. This property is found within the Angus Acres subdivision. It's originally established back in 1978, and it is defunct at this point. There is no active HOA. So the road so far, this process or this case originally came to town staff's attention through a series of code enforcement complaints back at the beginning of 2022, between January and April. Following that, staff did meet with property owner at a pre-application meeting back in May, which then led to them submitting for their conditional use permit. The neighborhood meeting was held on June 29th of 2022. The item was scheduled to go before Planning Commission on August 2nd. However, the item was continued and not heard by the commission. The applicant was not at a point where staff was comfortable bringing the item before the commission. So we did request a continuation to 10/4/2022. So that was the official second Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. That item was heard, but was resulted in being continued by the commission. It then did come before the commission for a 3rd time on November 1, 2022, and received a 5-1 vote recommending approval to town council. Town council then did hear it on December 13th, 2022, and received a 5-2 vote with the 6-month approval. It is now time to review that approval, which goes directly back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And it is here for your review tonight. So being a conditional use permit, there are conditions attached to it. Just to recap, there are 12 conditions. Originally started off with 13, but it was whittled its way down and modified, revised through both planning commission and town council. We resulted in 12 total stipulations. 1 through 2 are the pretty boilerplate ones. 3 is that initial 6-month approval, and then back to you guys for that 5-year consideration. 4, the original request was to have 70 horses and cattle total on property. This was revised down to 20 with the caveat that if there is a natural disaster in the area, this can increase an additional 20 for a short duration. 5 sets the hours of operations. It originally started as a Monday through Sunday, dusk to dawn operation. Throughout the revisions and dialogue, that was changed to Monday through Saturday for hay rent fundraising sales between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And then the equine rescue activities, still Monday through Sunday, but instead of dusk to dawn, it was changed to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The additional stipulation was added that veterinary emergencies are exempt. Number 6 pretty much covers the overall operation on how it's maintained, making sure that the animals are fed, manure is removed daily. It's placed in an enclosed area. It cannot be spread on site, must have water for the animals, shade, make sure that security is maintained, and then the applicant shall provide adequate fly control. 7, there must be parking there for any volunteers that appear on site. 8, restroom facilities. 9, on site, any signage will need to follow signage code. 10, must maintain that 501c3 status. 11, they need a business license here with the town. And 12, there shall not be any blocking of natural flow of water. So with that, the 6-month review period technically ended on June 13th of this year. At this time, staff is confident that they are in compliance with their conditions that were set forth. They're operating within that box. These pictures before you are all taken from today. I can blow them up if you request that or want to evaluate them further. We will say, and it was mentioned in your staff report, that there were a couple complaints that were received from the neighbors within that 6-month period. Those complaints or the concerns were relayed to the applicant. Staff believes that they did address those, and we did increase our once daily inspections to twice daily. Since that staff report was written, we did receive an additional complaint from a neighbor. However, code enforcement determined that it was unfounded, unfortunately. So with that, at this point, today, 7/18/2023, staff is finding the applicant in conformance with the conditions that were stipulated by council back in December. So with that, staff is recommending that you do hold a public hearing for this item and to approve the conditional use permit as presented, subject to the corrected conditions of approval that you received at the beginning of this meeting.
Which would be
The yellow sheet.
attachment A.
Correct. Yes, sir.
We have a question here.
Will, just to clarify, item 4 on the corrected. I think you meant increase the maximum to 30 because that was what was originally put down. It's on the second line at the very end.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, that
That
should
was
be
for the emergency.
correct.
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 Rather than 20, it should be 30.
You're
30,
absolutely
exactly.
correct.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
No, those things happen.
That was in the other paperwork we had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I read it this afternoon. Okay, so we're gonna change that to 30. Commissioner Metters, you had a question?
Same thing that in our first packet on page 45, it said a maximum of 50.
For the increase in,
Yeah, there was a couple of different,
Page
Right.
45.
it went back and forth significantly throughout.
but I believe at the last Planning and Zoning Commission, it was reduced per Commissioner Switzer's request.
Correct, down to 30.
The 20 and the 30.
And I believe that is correct.
Okay,
Okay,
and that's what we're going with tonight.
Correct. Yes, sir.
30.
Okay, any other questions for staff while they're up there?
Good evening, Will.
Good evening, Rachel.
I'm just wondering, going forward, if this CUP is approved for the next 5 years, will the town be maintaining regular check-ins daily? What will the status be from the town's perspective on
So-
checking in?
Absolutely. Thank you. It will be on town's radar. We probably won't conduct daily inspections, but obviously if we are receiving complaints, we will address them. And if that time they are founded, it will be brought back before P and Z and council for reconsideration if there is significant violation of their conditions.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one comment. I think it might be a wise decision to have a review halfway through the 5-year process.
Okay.
Have the applicant come in, kind of give us an update at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting as to what's going on, how things are going, and
Sure.
and maybe an update from staff on how things
Where
have
we're
been handled.
Absolutely. And you guys have the authority to make that change this evening if you want to add that condition on.
Okay, so when we make the motion, if we do make a motion, I'd like to get that included in it. That way,
Put it as 13,
pardon?
put it as 13.
Yes. To have a 2.5 year update from the owner of the property and also town staff
Absolutely.
for a review.
Well, quick question. Is the 5-year allowable period, is that typical? The time frame?
Conditional use permits are always usually non-typical. So that timeline, we've had different cases like these single family residences, they'll come to us as in perpetuity, so it'll be there forever. Or we'll have timelines that are as small as like 2 years. So it just really depends on the use, and that 5 year is through all these subsequent meetings, what was really determined ultimately.
Okay.
So it would be, you want to offer the person enough of a timeline so that he's not having to worry about closing down in a very short period of time, short period being a year and a half, 2 years or whatever.
Exactly it.
Yeah, he needs to know how to plan for the future.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else? Will, we may call you back
All
up.
righty.
Okay, is the applicant here? Would you like to step up to the podium and speak? You're not required to do that. Okay, thank you. If I ask you to come up to answer any questions from the town or from the commission, would you entertain that? Okay, I don't know that we do, but I'll ask that next. Does anybody have questions for the owner?
I have a question.
Okay, would you mind stepping up and answering the question if you choose? Please state your name for the record.
My name's Derek Bedeta.
Derek, I remember last time when we had a meeting that a concern I had was when you had volunteers coming to help do the cleanup and maintain care of the horses. Has that been consistent? And if so, is there a plan that you have in place now to handle that situation?
Yes, it's been consistent. And then when they're busy doing other things, because there's times when it's hard for them to get there, we've been stepping up and doing, like today, like Will was there and he saw how we cleaned all the manure and everything up, and what we were doing today. And we were doing that before it got hot. And so it was my father and I were out there taking care of things.
Okay. As far as a contingency plan, if that follows through, do you have a backup plan for that, for taking care of like the manure and the daily care of the horses?
Yes.
What is that backup plan?
As far as the personnel to take care of it.
Yes,
So you mean besides myself and the volunteers?
correct.
Well, basically, we were looking at getting more help in the future, so it'd be easier to take care of it. But right now, it's been like today. It was just myself and my father, so we made sure that happened.
Now,
Yeah.
Now there wasn't really a plan placed in before. So if you have a consistent plan now, do they come how many times a week? Is it a few times a week? Is it specific days, different times?
When they have time, and usually when they come there, they do a lot of things. And sometimes they have, I mean, I've had as many as 20 people there at one time. We did a lot of stuff beyond just the normal maintenance.
So then actually what you're telling me that it's not really consistent then. It's not a continual schedule where you have it where it's going to be followed a regiment, so to speak.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because they have an erratic schedule.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically we step up when we have to. And so, and we've reduced animals and come into compliance. So it's made it a lot easier to take care of that.
Okay. Thank you.
What would you say is the average number of folks that stop by on a weekly basis, or do you have them coming by on a daily basis? I know, so I've worked in a horse rescue and we used to do it on the weekends because that's when we had time to do that. So but do you have some kind of an idea of how many people a week usually stop by to help you out?
It's hard to say, but it varies. That's what I can say, you know. And then volunteers, if you know, that's really hard to say exactly, you know. And then some say they'll come and they don't come, and so we're left taking care of what we have to do.
So do you and your father, when they don't show up, you step into the breach and take care of the responsibilities of the day-to-day operation at that
Correct.
point? Okay, and do you feel like you're keeping up with that?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions for anybody? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We may call you back up after public comments if you want to address any of that business.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to open up the portion of the meeting for the public to step up and have comments on this item on the agenda. If you choose to speak, you'll raise your hand. I'll pick you. Okay, hold on, not done yet. I'll call you up. You'll step up to the microphone and state your name. When you speak, you'll speak respectfully. You're going to get 3 minutes. I may choose to let you go on longer than that if I feel it's necessary. And we'll all be polite and respectful. And if there's a lot of repetition, just say, I agree with that person that just spoke. I'm going to take notes and I'll write down every person's opinion on what they have to say about it. So, sir, you had your hand up. Please step up and tell us your name.
Hello, my name is Uzi. I live right next door. I have a couple of issues with your contract. When your contract stated that you guys needed to make an actual proper bullpen for the cattle and all that stuff. That's not a proper bullpen, sorry. Also, him picking up the manure is a lie. We have live video feed and that we've actually posted and sent to you guys of him spreading the manure all over his property instead of picking it up like the contract stated. So if that's going to be a constant thing, when it rained like a couple weeks ago before it got really hot, all that manure went into our property. We have a lot of flies now constantly with clunks of manure all over in our property. Do we have to let them know to pick up their manure to our property? Or is that going to be a constant issue of them not picking up their mess because they don't have enough staff that day, or not going to be able to pick up the manure for their cattle or their horses that day? Or is it because it's too hot or it's too cold? They say they have a nice shade for their animals. I really don't think that's enough shade for all their horses and cattle. Sorry, I live next door. I don't see that shade thing. Also, there's a huge amount of hay that they sell that's not in the picture, which is, I wonder where, that goes. That's a huge fire hazard, but that's another aspect of the situation. So that includes where they're at during the day. Do they bring them food during certain hours? Do they feed them you know, their water and everything. It's pretty hot out there. Do they have somewhere where they have this consistently for all the animals, or do they have an actual proper shade? Because it's hot. We're all inside, but they're outside. Do you have something to protect their from bad weather, good weathering? I'm just questioning all these aspects where if he wants this done, which I don't mind, but I want it done properly. You want it next to our house, all right, then do it properly. Hire somebody. Can't have volunteers all the time. Hire the staff. Can't do it yourself, hire the staff. What's the situation? You want to try to do this right, then let's do this right. It's just a consistency of bad failures, and I don't see this for years been going on and nothing's changed. Just a little bit here, a little bit there. Nice pictures today, but what about a couple weeks ago? That's where I'm questioning. That doesn't mean anything to me. You guys don't live there, but it smells terrible. You can smell that, especially when it rains. Oh. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to step up and speak? You first. And because you didn't speak as the property owner, I'm going to let you step up and speak. And you'll make your comments directly to us, please.
Yes, I will. My name is James Anderson. I am a good friend with Derek and his father. I purchase hay from them also. But I also volunteer myself to go over there and help out. I have run the tractor over there, and at times it may look like it's just being spread. But when you're walking around with a pitchfork, I got a drag behind the tractor, but I'm filling the bucket up and then taking it and dumping it. I've done that. I've also volunteered working on equipment and volunteered my time for that. I have done everything that I can do in my power to help them out. It's a good thing. I've repeated that in the past. There is proper shade. The hay sales is an ongoing thing. There is no fire hazard. I mean, we had a 72-acre fire here in Chino yesterday in an open field. But the place is up to where it needs to be at this right now. And when Derek doesn't get help, I can tell you, they pretty much have a hotline to me, and I'm available all the time. I'm retired. I can jump in my truck and be over there in 5 minutes. And I go over and give them a hand with pretty much whatever they need, whether it be up in the barn, whether it be working on equipment, whether it be cleaning pens, dragging pens, whatever needs to be done. All they have to do is ask me, and I'm over there to help them. So they have the help. They have the backup. To your statement earlier, do they have a backup plan? Yeah, they do. They do. They really do. There's myself. There's other people around in the community. There's people that come from Paulden that'll call whenever Derek calls and needs the help. Probation goes over there, the adult probation, they get spread out pretty thin. I know some of the officers in the probation department. They work down in Kirkland, they work down in Prescott, they work all over Yavapai County. They come over here when it's almost as if it's in like a rotation. Okay, today let's go here. They could really use some help. And it happens. If they don't show up, like I said, they get the help. Derek has the help. He has the backup plan. And I've done stuff. I go over there and volunteer, and I've even asked my friends to come with me or to work on the equipment with me. I've taken it over to my house equipment and worked on it on my own time in our shop near my house. So he does have the backup plan, and it's being covered. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Annie. I live next door. So for starters, I do have a few concerns, starting with the fact that there's a house on the corner, built a proper fence for all of the animals that they have within a few months, and gentleman did it alone. I remember seeing him out there with his daughter. There's no proper fence at all. So I do agree with what Uzi said. Not to mention, there's also the concerns of no proper feeding times. I used to work as a ranch hand, and I know that that specific lady had specific hours to feed the animals so they wouldn't go hungry, and she would time them. So I do know specific feeding times are important so the animals don't go hungry for long periods of time. So I do have those concerns in place in my head at the moment, not to mention the amount of manure that does tend to cross over. And I understand they can't clean it consistently, but it is a concern, especially with the amount of flies that it racks in over time. It's very gross to have to sit at our kitchen table and having to have a fly swatter in hand consistently because they come in and out. And there's no way of keeping that, I know, under control because it's an equine rescue. But I also want to know why there's this kind of limitation that we're putting on these people when every other equine rescue had to follow the same rules from the very beginning, and they didn't. So I don't understand why we're put in this leeway in a sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Slow rider, sorry. Okay, anybody else want to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ana Sotelo and I live next to them. And my concern is this, they give 6 months to fix all these complaints, right? They start fixing the complaints 3 weeks ago. The whole 5 months, there was the manure, all the problems. And they moved, last month, they moved the cows close to our fence. And now our fence is having damage and they don't fix it. So when they're gonna put their own fence, and that way we can have just a limit, and that way we don't have so much manure. And now the flies, I have to spray my door in and out all the time because when I try to open my own door, there's cover in flies. That's insane. And besides, they still working during the night. They not respect the time 7 to 7. They've been working over the night. And now they just put very high hay, and that way I won't see, but we can still hear the noise and the flashlights when they working 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And they still bring in the truck cover with hay in the middle of the night. So they're not respecting any the rules. So I'm very disappointed with this because they don't care. And besides, they've been hiding animals. They have more than 20 animals. We've been hearing in the mornings because I walk around to my yard and I hear sheep, goats, chickens. So they have more than 20 animals. So I don't understand why they want to have more animals if they don't have enough people to take care of those animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Martha Anderson. I just really wanted to more or less address the fact that as Mr. Zamudio had mentioned, about hiring staff, or the other gentleman that spoke earlier, they're a 501c3. That's a nonprofit. They don't make money enough to be able to hire, especially as a 501c3. If they hired people, then that opens up a whole new bucket of worms. because then they wouldn't totally be in compliance with the 501c3 because it is a nonprofit. I know Derek and his father for a while now. I was a foster parent for years here, and my older son went over there, like on the weekends after schools and stuff like that to help them. They're kind of at the mercy when they're using volunteers. They're really at the mercy of the people because they are volunteers. Just like with the probation department, as my husband said, there's a cycle that they do. And it's all a matter of when they can be there and when they can't, and the time frame that they can be there. So there's just a lot of different factors. As for the animals and the flies, I have 2.5 acres. Yes, I have animals, not, like I have like normal farm animals, right? And I also spray my doors because of the flies. But that's what happens when you have animals, and let's face it, when the weather's bad, everybody has flies, and it's something that we can't control. It's just the way it is. I would ask that you grant them the conditional use permit and just keep tabs on it as you have. I know that Will did drive-bys and stuff. So within the time frame, they didn't wait till the last minute. They really didn't to do this because my husband has been over there helping them work on everything. So, and it's for not having proper pens and them being out in the sun. That's, I have a barn, but I didn't for a while. But they're horses and cattle, and they're used to that, like being out on the range and stuff. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Kind of ran out of people. So if you came up once, you can't come up again, but you'll be coming up to answer questions. Anybody else from the public like to speak? All right, I'm going to close that portion of the meeting. Will, you get first shot?
What do you got?
Okay, so commissioners, I'm sure people have questions. Commissioner Zamudio, would you please start?
Yes, just so you know, ever since this started, I've driven by the property every 3 weeks. Okay. I've driven at nighttime, past 7 o'clock, definitely. There's activity at night, definitely. Okay. I've seen the manure issue was a big thing with me. I feel that's still not taken care of properly. The fencing definitely is another issue that still I see. I drove by there a couple of days ago just to look in as a glance. I'm still not satisfied with what I'm seeing. I do understand, the 501c3 issue, but I worry about the horses. To me, the horses are what my priority is. They're animals. We speak for the animals. So to me, that's a big thing that's my concern is with the animals.
Okay, did you have any questions though?
Well, when you went out there to say that the conditions were taken care of, did you see during the times beforehand the conditions that I mentioned? And I see some of the pictures here. Yeah, they look, a little bit different than what I remember too seeing the last couple of days. But do you feel it is satisfactory to you, to what you've been seeing from what you saw before to what it is now? And do you feel confident that's going to stay that way?
Sure. Thank you. So we'll start off with the operation overnight. The only complaint staff did receive was back in April from a neighbor to the south. That was a truck that came in at like 7:20, and she had video of that. Any other staff that did not receive any other complaints of overworking, working over or outside of those hours of operation. So that was not something staff was focused on. As far as fencing and manure, based on the parameters that are set, and then, you know, in conjunction with rescues that are also operating within the AR5 district, which this property is not. It is staff's opinion that they are held at a higher standard than some of the rescues here that are currently operating that do not need a CUP to operate. So that's one of the big distinguishing differentiations between these two, is that this one needs it because of their zoning district. The other AR5 one, or the ones that are located within AR5, are not held to as high of a standard, because this is going to be a special case. But to answer your question, it is staff's opinion that yes, it is satisfactory to code the conditions that were stipulated by town council, and I have the faith, or we have the faith in the property owner that they can perform and continue to meet these. However, if they do not, we have the vessel to correct that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Furno.
Thank you, Will. I think the question was brought up, which you may have already answered, but like, why are they not being held to the same requirements from the beginning as the other equine rescues? Am I right in assuming that's because of their current zoning?
That is correct.
Okay, so they were operating in the zoning, and then once town staff became aware, that's how we started this process of conditional use permit, correct?
Yes, correct.
So I'm wondering, as far as fly abatement,
Sure.
I live in an AR5 neighborhood. Flies are kind of a part of Chino. We're an agricultural community. However, I don't like to be affected by my neighbors if they're not proactive. So what did you observe as far as their fly abatement process? Are we talking about the bags, or what are they doing to try and be proactive? Because I do agree with the public member who spoke that they're not making the choice to have cattle and
Sure.
horses on their own property, so they should not have to be affected daily by that.
Okay.
What did you observe as far as that?
So throughout the course of the 6 months, the property owner did try various means of fly abatement. They tried the bags, they tried the strips, and what they ultimately, I believe they did settle on the bags. I exit out of this. Give me 1 second here. I can blow up the picture. These bags are there throughout. I counted at least 15 whenever we walked the property this morning. The amount of flies in there is rather incredible. And throughout all of the walkthroughs that we did, this one was the one that had the most success, if you will, on collecting and really abating the fly nuisance. I will say within the last several weeks, it's been a little hard to determine that due to the heat, as I don't think we were really bugged at all by any flies when we walked the property today, or was it a couple weeks ago when we went, but they both were dry days. But we did observe all of these fly bags with some level of flies in there, both alive and obviously dead, but they were obviously doing their job. And so that's what they ultimately decided on. The applicant reuses them as many times as they can, but he's frequently purchasing them, or they're being donated to his rescue.
Okay, and then, so you walked the property today.
Yes, correct.
Did you notice any additional animals, fence damage, things of that nature?
Fence damage, the only one that was observed is with their electrical fence. They have it on the horse end. Their panels were kicked off the rain or through the wind. They're still under repair on that. But as far as the quality of the fence, we did not notice, myself and one of the code enforcement officers did not notice anything that was detrimental. Apologize, what was the first part of that? No, it was fencing and
See if I can remember.
yes. Sorry.
Just when you walk the property,
Yes.
did you notice any
Additional animals.
additional animals?
And there are goats on site as well as chickens. I did not observe any sheep, but that also, those animals were not conditioned as to be restricted. They were left unrestricted.
Because the quantities part of the CUP are for hooved.
For
animals,
large
correct?
hoofed animals,
Large
correct,
hoofed animals.
correct. Because under current code, any large acre, 1 acre and up has the ability, unrestricted ability to have cattle, horse, Goat, sheep, chickens, no capacity on that. The only thing we restrict here in town limits is swine, and that is limited to 1 per acre. So everything else, anything outside of the large hooved are technically in compliance with code.
Okay, and then I just want to make sure that I get clear from all the changes that the CUP is going to be for 20 full-time large hooved animals.
Correct.
And then in an emergency situation, they can take on 30 more.
I believe it is 10 more.
So
To a
for a
total.
total of 30
Correct.
for 3 weeks.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. All right, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
You got off easy till now.
All
I-
right,
I
let's
see
do
a
it.
question.
Okay, so,
I see a question.
oh, you have one? You didn't write nothing down. I watched you.
She's got it in her mind.
I was watching.
No, I'm
It's,
sorry to jump in front of you.
they did acquire a business permit for the hay sale, correct?
That will be, if approved tonight, we will issue a business license.
They can't have one until they get the fee.
It's staff to issue one conditionally and then go through, you have to do it again. It would just made more sense that if it's tonight, it is determined that it's going to be issued for 5 years, we will issue a business license.
Yuri, anything you got? Bill? Thank you. All right, now I get at you. Okay, so there was concerns about spreading manure washing onto the property, fire hazard because of the hay. Why don't they hire staff? The comment was there was no change in the way the property looked from back whenever to now. Can we maybe start with the fencing? Has there been any animals reported wandering off or escaping
Not that
or
staff is,
being a nuisance to anybody by wandering onto their property?
no, staff has not been made aware of any sort of
Okay,
issues with.
and one of the other comments was there was hidden animals, that there were more animals than what they're claiming in your inspection today, aside from the various little goats and chickens and maybe sheep, the hooved big animals.
They were at 20.
Okay. Let's see, consistent feedings. I'll talk to the owner about that one. Has there been any complaint with any of the other neighbors, as far as you know, about manure going onto their property? I know the folks to the north have issues. with
Staff
that.
only received the ones for the neighbors to the north. The majority of the complaints did come from that property owner. The only additional complaint that staff received was from a property owner to the south, and she was the one who had video of the delivery at 7:20.
Okay. So that brings up another question. With this conditional use permit, if the guy decides to go out and work on his private vehicle that has nothing to do with the conditional use permit at 8 o'clock at night, is he going to be restricted for doing something like that?
If it's not related to the equine activity, no, he will not be restricted.
Okay, because that would be a concern for me, that we would be in the middle of his private life that much. All right, there was a comment of working. I'll talk to the owner about that one. I'm going to skip that one. Okay. So in your observations as town staff, have you seen a concerted and significant effort to improve the quality of this project and the animal care and the folks doing the best that they have available to comply with all of the rules and stipulations that we've asked them to do?
Correct. Yes, it is staff's opinion that they have made substantial strides on this. They've met, the parameters that were set by the conditions or by council with the conditions approval that were met. I believe the majority of the last 6 months, there were the probationary volunteers that did come on site, but I believe the majority of the work that was done by Derek and his dad. And so that was one of the big tests for staff, was whether or not two individuals can maintain this property to the standards that are set by the conditions. And staff's opinion is they can. And so that was one of the biggest things, because we understood they might not always have volunteers, or the volunteers in quantity that they have. Once staff did receive those complaints back in was mid-April, early March, or sorry, mid-April, early May, staff did update or upgrade their frequencies on the drive-by visits that we had. We had the code enforcement officer would take a morning picture and an evening picture to make sure that there was movement. We stared at poop, make sure that it was actually moving, and it was. So it is staff's opinion that yes, they are able to do it, and I believe they're able to do it with the two, as long as they keep the same drive going that they currently have.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have questions for Will?
Well, question,
Yes.
do you have a picture of the fence line to the property owner to the north?
To the north. Oh, grainy.
I'm looking for one actually from the street side, looking right up the fence line.
I do not have one for that.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Yes.
since the whole fire hazard issue has come up, is this, I mean, should we be concerned for a sale barn kind of like this with hay as far as a fire concern? What if something happened? I mean, if I was a neighbor, I would probably be concerned about that as well, even for the animal's safety if something were to erupt in there.
Sure.
This property is in county, correct?
No, it is.
It is in town. It's right on, okay.
So the hay is actually stored out in the open
It's
Well, what's
split
that
much
arch
worse.
barn?
and in the barn, and it's,
Okay.
it looks to me like it's pretty much stored like it is at Olson's, other than this part of it is undercover, is not undercover.
As far as the question to fire hazard, I unfortunately couldn't speak to that. That would be something that CAFMA would have to weigh in on.
Were they solicited for any input?
As part of the original proposal, yes, but we received no comment.
They didn't comment.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right,
All right.
anybody else? Thank you, Will.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have one
Oh,
question.
Almost made it.
Yeah, and again, it's about the hay. How far is the hay from any structure other than the barn where it's stored? The hay that's out in the open, how far is it from the nearest residence?
I would say you're probably closer to the neighbor to the north than they are the actual property owner's house.
Uh-huh.
But a distance, I would just be speculation.
You
I
don't
couldn't
have a
give-
straight on shot from the road?
From the road, no. It's not really a good one either. So you're looking at, it's actually probably midway. So you're looking at the hay roughly in this corner here. This is the hay barn property owner's house, and then the neighbor to the north. So you're, in my opinion, almost dead center between structures. I couldn't tell you the distance though, unfortunately.
But it's not right next to any structure, seems to have a significant space around it.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out as to how close to the nearest structure. It looks like it's an adequate distance.
Well, it's at least 2 lengths of the building away from the neighbor's building.
All right, thanks, Will.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Will. Anybody else?
Yes, I have one more question. Will.
Sure.
I wish Frank was here because I am wondering, I don't see anything in our conditional use in regards, I mean, I'm looking at item 12 and it's saying that they shall not block the natural overland flows from stormwater runoff. Is there something that we can put as far as drainage to that property to the north where they're saying that they're getting that runoff of manure? And I look at this with situations with other people where rain runoff pushes decomposed granite into someone else's yard or things like that. I just don't feel like the impact on the neighbors should be minimal as possible. So I don't know.
What possible avenue to help mitigate?
Well,
that?
if the manure is being picked up, there's
Right.
no stopping the natural water flow. It's probably
Correct.
flowed like that
For-
since anybody moved there.
Right.
But if the manure is being kept cleaned up, then the neighbor should not have to deal with some manure that doesn't belong to them floating through their property any more than what they would have to if somebody was keeping 5 horses and wasn't running a horse rescue next
Of
door.
course. And you always end up with the manure that obviously they poop every 3 hours. So you're going to have manure on the ground. It's going to float. If the commission would be open to adding an additional stipulation and then obviously confirming this with the property owners, maybe attached to their fence, some sort of screen, whether it's a tighter wove fence to help catch some of this while allowing water to pass, but it also prevents any sort of undue manure trespass. Just some sort of thought to help with that mitigation. So it's not obstructing the flow, but by the off chance that manure is floating, that would prevent that issue, or at least help mitigate it.
Yes, I'm just thinking, forward thinking. We've just had an unusually dry July.
Absolutely.
But going forward, since we've kind of heard mixed reviews as far as the timely cleanup, the storage, is the manure being stored in an enclosed area
Correct. Yes.
before? Okay, so it is being, I'm just wondering, going forward, if there's something that we can encourage the property owner for drainage.
That's not practical. This piece of property is about as flat as a piece of property is in Chino Valley. It's not like he's got drainage ditches forcing the water to come out at certain places. There's a possibility that you could maybe put a ditch between the neighbor's property and his property, but then if he redirects the flow out of the natural exiting point, then he takes responsibility for somebody else's property getting covered with it. I don't think that's going to be a solution, but I do kind of like the idea of a tighter woven fence that would help stop some of that, but I would not recommend putting it so tight that nothing will wash through it because it'll
Right.
wash out every time it rains.
So it's going to be a thin line of.
So I think maybe the combination of that and just keeping the manure cleaned up as possible. I mean, it's unreasonable to expect anybody to follow their horse around and pick it up as fast as it goes out. I'm not doing that with my horse, so why would I expect somebody else to do that? Okay. Thank you, Will.
You're welcome.
Okay, would the applicant like to come up and respond to some of the questions? Okay, Commissioner Zamudio, you want to start? We'll just go down the line again, and I promise to wait my turn.
I think I've said what I needed to say. The questions that the panel has asked, the commissions have asked have been satisfactory to me. So I think I have what I need to decide on this case.
I would agree. I don't have any questions for the applicant right now.
Commissioner Metters?
Do you have any fire extinguishers on the property near the hay?
Yes.
Okay.
Gary?
No question.
Bill? Okay, well, I do a few anyways. I'm gonna just mention some comments that were made and then maybe we can address them a little one or two or three at a time. One of them was concerning spreading the manure as opposed to picking it up and storing it. Concern about the manure washing off the property, fire hazard because of the hay. Why aren't you hiring staff? No physical change in the property. Proper fencing, consistent feeding times. Flies, working at 3 o'clock in the morning. So how would you like to address some of those things?
So that's a long list, and without
How about
having
we
all those in
start
front
with
of me.
spreading the manure and work our way down from there? Are you guys spreading it, picking it up, storing it? What are you doing with it?
We pick it up and then we put it in an area where it's stored, and then it's loaded onto the dump trailer and it's taken off the property.
Okay, and one of the volunteers mentioned that you dump it into something that may look like a drag, but it's not a drag to haul the manure.
He was talking about, we have a tractor, we have a drag, and we have a tractor with a bucket. He was talking about how he puts it in the bucket and then he drags out the field to make it better. The field being dragged out helps work the field and keep the weeds down and all that stuff. So that's, I mean.
But he's not dragging the manure, he's
No,
dragging the field itself.
yeah.
Okay,
And so, I mean, I just did that today. I was picking up manure in a wheelbarrow and then we dragged it out.
so what about the manure issue, washing if we get one of our famous rainstorms? And
This whole
would you
thing,
entertain putting some kind of a barrier at the bottom of the fence to help slow that down, or how, what
Well-
do you got for an idea?
I think it was number 12. I think this whole item came up because there's been some rainstorms, and I actually have video of it. There was a rainstorm that dumped, must have been 2 or 3 inches. This was some years ago in our local area, and we have a floodplain in the front of the property, which is surprising that they let them build the house right there because there's a floodplain right there, and that's why my house is in the back. And so that floodplain goes right in front of their house. And so I'm thinking it was built many years ago, and that's why. But what we did is we had rock piles that we were trying to slow the flow because it was just coming through. I mean, it washed my driveway out several times. And so people put riprap and different stuff to slow this flood down, and so I think the neighbor that is to the south of me that built his house was complaining about everything he could possibly complain about. And so he's saying, oh, they're storing a material stockpile here and this and that. So we organized it and made it so it looks more, designed. And so it helps slow that down. Then on a culvert, we put like a no climb fence. It's a tighter weave than a bigger, smaller squares. And so I'm constantly going over there and cleaning, because it's not just manure, it's dirt, like you were talking about, dirt and other materials. And if it gets really bad, it washes out my driveway, and then I have to go get the material and put it back on my driveway and rebuild my driveway. And so I can put some of that stuff on the fence and will help with
Would you be open to doing that?
yeah. And I was thinking about that when you guys were talking about this, but I know I've already started putting into place different things along the line to help. And I've been digging out that, because on the south side of my driveway, I have all this stuff that comes from a good portion of my property and other properties, and I'm there digging it out all the time because it's a lot of dirt and stuff that just washes down.
Okay, we may consider making that part of the conditional use permit. Okay. How often do you feed the animals? You feed them
Twice a day. Twice a day.
consistently every day?
Yes, every day.
Within an hour of the feed time, one way or the other? In other words, you
Yes.
feed them
Yeah,
at 6
and-
o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night, or?
Yeah, it's usually around that time. And then sometimes I put a lot of food in front of them. They have food all day long.
Okay, so they're being fed twice a day consistently.
Yes.
Okay. And the fly situation, it seems like Will's seen a lot of the fly bags. After the meeting's over, I can offer you another suggestion that I use at my place. It's worked out well.
Okay.
So get with me after the meeting is
Okay.
over, whether this gets approved or not, it'll still help you. Right. Anybody have any other questions for the owner? And you are below the required number of animals?
Correct.
Or at or below the required number of animals?
Correct.
And you
Yes.
maintain that number consistently?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of the meeting. And I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the conditional use permit CUP 2022-01 as presented, subject to the staff amended report and information provided during this hearing and conditions of the approval on attachment A.
Including item 13.
Yes, with the addition that we have another report in 2.5 years.
So to clarify that item 13 a little bit more, Gary, if you don't mind, that we would review this. The owner would come in and at that time and come before the Planning and Zoning Commission and submit a update along with town staff.
Did you also want to include the tighter weave fencing on the
Yes.
north end?
You want to try to put that one in there?
So what you,
Okay, and for item 14, to address the runoff going to the north of the property.
and then we had the number 4 correction.
Maximum.
Maximum of 30
Okay.
during national natural disaster or emergencies
Everything.
for item 4.
All right, did we cover all the bases?
All I have on my notes, Lori, was that?
That's good.
okay.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion before we vote? Okay, it's going to be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'll do that. Commissioner Welker,
Yes.
Commissioner Penn is absent. Commissioner Zamudio,
No.
alternate Furno,
No.
Commissioner Metters,
No,
Vice Chair Paziak,
Yes,
Chair Merritt.
Yes.
You have a 3-3, which is a denial. Robert's Rules of Order do allow this to be brought back if the applicant gets with one of the no votes and one of the no votes agrees to have it reconsidered at the next planning commission meeting.
So a comment to this from me, and then we're all going to explain why we voted no. It's
And-
unfortunate that it has gotten to this point because this gentleman has struggled hard to meet these conditions. And now with this no vote, that means there is no conditional use permit. And he can go right back to the mess that he was in before. Not that he would intend to do that, but that's his right and ability in this town under the current code requirements. So it would be actually, in my personal opinion, the town, it would benefit the town more that this was in place than it not be in place. So maybe there's an opportunity for somebody to think about that, and that could be brought forward at the next meeting. Commissioner Zamudio, would you please explain your reasoning for voting?
Yes. I still feel that the contingency plan for staffing and cleaning that yard is not, to me, is not acceptable. I would invite you to see how my neighbor does his yard. He has horses and plenty, believe me, he has about 20 of them. And to see his yard, I am south of him, so the water comes to me. there is nothing on that ground. He is up there, him and whoever's there, they're there picking up everything every single day. And I do not see anything on that yard. I'll look specifically, and I have been for a while. I just think I would invite you to take a look at his place. But I feel that that would not be consistent, and it would, to me, it would not, I was gonna feel it's proper for the area, and that condition is not feasible for me. I think it's gonna go back down to what it was before. It's just, it's been fixed nice now, but I think it's not gonna be that maintained that way.
I agree with several of the comments about the upkeep and maintenance. I have concerns about the 5 years and the ability of staff to check in, regulate. I also think that the neighbors' concerns are valid, the ones that are here this evening, when it comes to the impact on their quality of life as well. Yeah.
Commissioner Metters?
I drove by the place. I didn't think there was adequate shade for the horses. I didn't think the fence between their place and the neighbor to the north was adequate to hold cattle. Even though if it had a hot wire on it, they can push through the bottom. And I personally would have liked to have seen this continued for 6 more months and come back before it was to be voted on.
Repeat that, please.
I said I would have liked to have seen it continued for another 6 months and see if they made progress for the winter, because that was when it was in such bad condition, when we had all the snow and the water on the ground and they couldn't get the equipment out to take care of the batter. But I would entertain looking at it again next month.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Welker? You got to speak into the mic.
I don't much care for the fences, but those can be replaced with time. But everything else looks good.
Okay. Vice Chair Pasiak?
Well, my concern is, as you commented, right now, the town does not have a limit of the number of hooved animals you can have on your property. So this is the only way we have right now to control the number of hooved animals. Being that this has been disapproved, he can go back to having 20, 30, 40, 50, as many as he wants on his property right now. And other than a complaint to code enforcement, there's nothing the town can do. And that's why I thought we ought to go with conditional use.
So, a couple of comments. Comments about the shelters, the hay shades. My horse has the same type of shade. I've seen it standing out in the middle of the pasture in the middle of the day. Not in the shade, so there's no telling what drives them to stand where they stand. As far as the fence, there hasn't been any complaints of animals getting out. It is a 501c3 ministry, which means that they operate without a profit, and so their ability to purchase infrastructure and fencing, buildings, et cetera, is very limited on the donations that they receive. The fact that 2 men can keep this place up and have been doing so without the volunteers shows to me that they've done their due diligence in keeping the place up. The volunteers are nice, but it seems to me that they've kept up on the property. I see places all over Chino Valley that look very similar to this, and in some cases much worse. I don't see any issue with what I saw today when I drove by the site. as far as fly control. If you have horses, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, or chickens, you're gonna have flies. And I agree that the larger number of livestock, the more flies you have. But he seems to be doing what can be done to remediate that. Again, after the meeting, if you'll please see me, I'll offer you another suggestion. I voted for this for several reasons. This is Chino Valley. We're supposed to be an agricultural community. Agricultural consists of horse manure, cow manure, hay barns, fencing of all sizes, shapes, and types, and volunteer help with plans. That's all well and good, but when you're running a volunteer operation, having been involved with that, you're at the mercy of those folks. And if you can hold up your end of the stick without them, then that's good for you. And it seems to me this has been done. If it was being operated as a business to make money, then we should be holding this person to a much tighter standard, but that's not the case here. It is very unfortunate that we're here at this point. I think we're ruining a lot of good work. I would encourage you, sir, to please keep up your efforts. Maybe there's a possibility this can be brought back before us at some date in the future. You've heard our comments. The fact that you have done so well here after starting and where you started at is commendable to you. Don't give up. Please continue forward with what you're doing. It's a blessing that you're able to take these animals on.
Mr. Chairman, there's two things. One is without the CUP, the owner is not allowed to sell hay. That's the piece that requires the CUP. The other is Robert's rules give you to the next meeting to bring the case back.
Okay, so explain that to us unfortunate souls that don't study that much.
So anyone that voted no, the applicant can have a conversation with them and ask them if they would be willing to bring it back for reconsideration at the next meeting.
And I did state that.
You said you would be open to that. Okay, so we also have to do legal noticing and stuff. So that'll be another case that we'll put on that agenda.
To clarify, if it is reconsidered for next meeting, is it heard or is the decision made to reconsider and then place it on the subsequent?
I think it has to be on that meeting.
On that meeting. So
Yep.
if the determination is made that a no vote would like to rehear it, they would need to contact staff so we can.
We just got the contact.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody clear on that?
Going to be reconsidered next meeting.
Okay, so one other comment. It seems to be a concern about a track record and moving forward and keeping things in good shape. This would be a comment for the owner to take under advisement that people are watching every day. Again, it's commendable that you've done what you've done there to alleviate as many of the concerns as possible. I would encourage you strongly to keep up the good work. And at some point, if you can convince one of the commissioners to have it brought forth to the next meeting, which it's already did, but you might have a conversation with that person to convince that person of your intentions. And then that will be stated at the meeting that she's had that conversation. So it's not a conflict of interest or whatever we would call that.
Correct. It would also be wise for the applicant to hear the concerns and come back with ways that he is willing to mitigate those concerns.
So if you can come up with a plan, better fencing, and some thought on drainage, and bring it back before the commission next time, there is an opportunity there for you.
What's the date? What's the date of our next meeting?
August.
August.
I have a question. Was
First
it
is-
recommended that the applicant also talk with the neighbors?
It's always
And just, I
recommended.
mean, to me, that's the biggest thing, the encroachment on their property and their concerns. If you guys can work out something, I mean, that's the best idea. That's
First.
the best. Because, I mean, you have to respect each other's property and definitely, and that's my thing is if that can be remedied, to me, that'd be the best idea, but, that's why I would recommend to have that done, if that's the case, if it'll work for it. If not,
If you have concerns about maybe missing something in this conversation, you can always go back and watch this whole meeting over again to hear the comments that were made, who made them, suggestions, ideas, so forth. If you choose to do that, just so you don't have to remember every word that somebody said. And Commissioner Pasiak mentioned that it is August 1st is the next meeting. All right, we're going to move forward to item D, which is information items. Does the staff have anything on that?
Nope.
Does the commission have any thing they would like to speak about that we didn't talk about tonight? Chairman's going to take a pass because I'm wore out. This is an opportunity next for the public to step up to the microphone and speak about anything that they would like that the commission has authority over except what was on the agenda tonight. Would anybody like to come up and speak? All right. We're going to go to the one we've all been waiting for. Item E, a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and your politeness.
And is this another?